good. This research that Cécile will introduce was presented yesterday at the CNC and has been published on the CNC website. So the purpose today is not to go through the details of the research, but Cécile will quickly introduce the key trends that have been identified as part of this research. And from there, we will have a discussion with Fatima and Phil about these findings, if that's okay for all of you. And actually, even if it's not okay, that's the way it's going to be. So everybody knew the 14 points of Wilson, but now we have the 14 points of the CNC. And so, Cécile, I'll let you start.
Thank you, Julien. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for organizing this panel about the research. Just a few words about why the CNC commissioned this research first. So it was back in September 2025. The box office figures in France were, let's say, mixed figures. And we could see that the recovery was slower than expected worldwide. So the objective was quite simple, but also ambitious. We wanted to take a step back to zoom out on the French market that we know very well. And we wanted to look what's happening in other markets and to understand how is cinema exhibition evolving? How has it evolved 5 years after the pandemic? What is irreversible, what is still open, and what are the challenges and opportunities, of course, for cinemas. So we entrusted 3 partners to do this research, Ciné Group, but also OMDIA with David Hancock on board, and Exacom with Florence Leborgne. And they did a great job. They did, I think, a massive job. Researching 14 markets. That was our request, to have a deep dive on specific markets, to go beyond the surface and to really understand the underlying factors of the situation. And so one key element to bear in mind is that actually, even though the box office worldwide is still 19% below pre-COVID levels, actually the situation varies a lot. Some markets are more resilient than others. Some are still struggling, like, for example, South Korea. And some are actually booming, like Vietnam and Japan, that had a wonderful 2025 year. So there is not one single trajectory for cinema. That being said, we could identify trends that we can that actually prevail all across the globe, in all regions of the world, with some nuances, of course. So 14 insights for 14 markets. So we go very briefly through them. Maybe the major shift has been on the consumer side, like, you know, moviegoers are becoming more and more selective. They flock en masse to event movies, but that raises a question: is how to build consumer loyalty, right? But what we see and what the study highlights is not that people don't like cinema anymore. It's like it has to be worth it leaving home. And it's particularly true for younger generations, and that's point 4. Actually, what we see is that cinemas are more relevant than ever for those younger generations, because they want those social experiences, and that's clearly what is distinctive about the cinema experience. And it's also a place to disconnect, and that's also very different from other screens. So actually, Gen Z, Gen Alpha are the ones that go more often to the cinemas still today. Cinema is not dead at all. So that's obviously a key takeaway. Another key takeaway is that also one solution is diversity. Diversity in programming. What we see, point 2, is that markets that are the most resilient are the ones with a strong local production, and there is an appetite from audiences for those local productions. That's the case in Vietnam, that's the case in Japan, but also in other markets like Saudi Arabia starting. Diversity in programming is also alternative programming. That's point 3. So the niche strategy, not only targeting a mass audience, but targeting communities. So it can be concerts, it can be sports events, it can be re-releases, etc. So it's often only a few show times, but it's much more. They're much more valuable. So it will not be necessarily a game changer for the business model of movie theaters, but it's a complement in terms of revenues, and it enables theaters to reach out to different audiences. What we see also is that in same kind of value-driven strategies is obviously premium. Premium is rolling out all across the globe. Some markets are more advanced than others, but it's quite successful. It's part of the solution because obviously not all screens can be premium. Premium has to remain a minority to justify being premium. And premium actually can take various forms. It's not just about technology anymore, it's also about comfort, and maybe even more about comfort, about curation, about hospitality, about what interviewee said, the design or the whole experience. And so that's point 7. Point 5 and 6, we see that exhibitors are also gaining better control of marketing and access to movies, and that's very important, marketing of the films, because there's an issue of awareness on movies, and marketing also of venues, of the place itself. Not just a place to go and watch movies, but a place to live, to stay. And independent cinemas are actually better equipped for those challenges because they've been used, to engage their audiences, to share the passion for cinemas. They had to. They don't have the same financial power as multiplexes. So there are new opportunities for independent cinemas, and of course also for art house movies here. Skipping to the next page, also, of course, pricing is key. And here, we've seen different approaches regarding pricing. It really depends on your local audience. But that means you need to know your audience, you need to collect data, and you need to know how to use data. And here, there's room to grow for theaters. AI also, it's on the rise, but still, cinemas have not embraced it yet. And also, that was one conviction, of course, of the CNC as a public institution. The markets that are the most resilient are the ones with strong public policies and stable regulatory frameworks. But what we've seen is that often movie theaters are overlooked by public policies that tend to focus on production, right? And it's an issue because obviously movie theaters are at the heart of the ecosystem. And that's where the value of films is being built. And so that raises also the question of the exclusivity window that is no longer a given, that has shrinked during the pandemic. But there were recent announcements from the studios, the US studios, to have a longer exclusivity window, but it's still often a struggle. And it was one of the reasons why some markets had difficulties recovering also. But still, streaming is not the enemy. It's not the enemy. We see that actually people, young people especially, that are heavy users of streaming platforms are also the ones that go often to the movies. So it's not contradictory. And well, streamers are investing more and more in film productions for theaters. Sometimes because there are obligations, investment obligations, like in Europe, but still. And finally, we wanted to point out the need for greater accessibility. Actually, it was hardly touched on during the interviews, the accessibility. But we feel it, and we see that it underlines the exclusive and social nature of cinemas that, as I said, is today the distinctive asset of movie theaters. So it's not just an ethical issue, it's also a business matter, driving also those new audiences. So to conclude, I'd say that there are lots of details, lots of data and examples in the report, and it's in French and English on the website of the CNC. The future of cinemas lies, and that's what the research shows, in cinemas that are more diverse, more experiential, more engaging with audiences, and that know better their audiences, and that are supported by public policies.
Thanks a lot, Cécile, for this express download of the report that I encourage you to download from the CNC website. So as Cécile mentioned, it was across 14 territories in Americas, in Europe, in Asia. So it's not a global research in a sense that we are focused on 14 independent territories, but it gives a pretty interesting overview. So I'll start with you, Phil, with a first reaction on the report as a whole, and what are the striking points for you? What came maybe as a strong confirmation, some elements that came as a surprise, some challenges you might have on the with the report? What was your first reaction?
So I think it's a great report, and congratulations to Cécile and colleagues behind it, because it puts some flesh on the bones of a narrative which I think many of us in the room and many of us who talk to cinema operators, not just in Europe but globally, are seeing, which is, yes, there are challenges, there are some headwinds, and some of those are more within the gift of cinema operators to manage than others. But there is huge potential for us to continue to grow. There is huge potential for us to continue to have that unique place in communities.
Don't hesitate to speak slightly closer to the mic.
Yeah, okay, sorry. For cinemas to continue to have that unique place with their audiences and in communities. I think the confirmation is something which cinema operators of all shapes, sizes and locations would say, which is it is more challenging than ever to get people out of their homes and into cinemas, and perhaps even more challenging to get them to be frequent cinema goers. There is a coalescence of certain audiences around big event films, but that shouldn't deter us from trying to continue to broaden audiences, because as the report says and as much experience confirms, there is an appetite amongst audiences of all ages, particularly young audiences, for more diverse films and more diverse experiences. And I'm pleased, people have heard me bang on about this for a long time, I'm pleased that it takes the notion of a premium cinema experience outside of just the technology. We as a European trade body and the national trade associations that sit beneath that, we represent cinemas, many of whom have IMAX, premium large format screens, Dolby Atmos, etc., etc. But the majority of our members, that's never going to be the reality for them because of resource, because of the physical limitations of their cinema. But many of them are offering premium experiences. Premium is very much in the eye of the customer, essentially. It's about how the customer feels about their experience. And for some that will be technology, for some not. So in headline, there's lots to be positive about in here, and I'm the word I'd use is tiggerish. I'm always very upbeat about the industry, and I would always encourage colleagues, if we can't promote our industry, who will, essentially. But there are some things in there which I think, which are challenges for us as an industry. I was struck by the comment about artificial intelligence. We had our UK conference last week, and we had I won't name names, but we had a panel of 2 or 3 of the major studios, 3 or 4 cinema operators, different sizes. And the question was asked from the floor, how are you using AI to drive audiences? And it may be, in fairness to the colleagues on the studio side, that's not their part of the role. But the people from the cinema side, I would expect to have had an answer, and there was no answer. And we know that our audiences, in many respects, are using AI, are using ChatGPT and a whole range of other engines in informing their cinema choices. So we just need to make sure we don't miss the boat on that, and that we, as a sector, collectively as well as individually, understand where that technology might be heading and what that might mean for our sector.
Thanks, Phil. Fatima, you probably noticed that art house theaters were singled out in this report as paving the way for the industry as a whole. Did it come as a surprise, as a confirmation? What was your reaction about the report as a whole and this item in particular?
First of all, thank you for the invitation, and congratulations for the great report. Yesterday we had our. It's better.
Yeah, just because for in the room that's okay, but when our colleagues online will hear you better.
So yesterday we present the executive summary of this survey to our members. I represent an organization called Europa Cinema, which gathers more than 1,300 cinemas all over Europe, and they mainly, I mean, I would say 97% of them are art house cinemas. I see some of the members here in the room. So they're showing European films mainly, and they are very active. And so, I mean, let's say the findings of this report were not surprising, I would say, for us. If we would have run the survey, and we have run a lot of surveys among Europa Cinema members, and I know that the CKA, which is the house, I mean the international organization of art house cinemas, did as well surveys. I mean, all the 14 items cited would have been fitting to what art house cinemas are doing. I mean, there is no surprise if I take them one after the others that the behaviors have changed. I mean, since a long time. I mean, I think that Phil, I agree with you, but what you say is about cinemas in general. I think what differ, let's say, art house cinemas from mainstream cinemas is that the art house cinema exhibitors, they are engaging, and they are engaged with communities and not with moviegoers like this. I mean, they know the people who are coming to the cinemas, perhaps because they are smaller venues, and with a very diverse programming, so targeting different people. I know some cinemas, they organize Polish film festivals because they're targeting the Polish communities living not far away from the cinema. So there is a lot of things said here, which I'm not going to repeat, but I would say that art house cinema exhibitors are doing this for a very long time, I think one thing which is not perhaps mentioned is the school screenings, the work which is done in many cinemas. I'm not sure it's organized in multiplexes, even if I know that in some specific countries, some exhibitors are organizing this kind of screenings in the morning, targeting schools and pupils, I mean, young children from 3 to 6, to show them short films and of very diverse national origins. So, I mean, there is a lot of things done already in the cinemas, in the art house cinemas, and specifically in the Europa Cinema members. And I think this is not surprising for me, but I'm very happy actually to read all these conclusions. And
so we'll get into the details a bit more, but before we get there, Cécile, after this introduction you gave us, maybe it's interesting for us to understand why the CNC commissioned this research, because what was a bit maybe unusual is that you told us, let's look at 14 countries and let's not look at France. Let's not try to compare versus what we do. But now that we are done with this work, what was the initial point, and what did you expect? And now, what did you get, and what are your observations from the French perspective?
So, as I was saying at the beginning, our objective was really to change perspectives because we're very much focused, obviously, on the French market. So we know the French market very well, but sometimes maybe we lose focus on some things. And so it's interesting, to look at different markets and see what's happening there. And obviously, the big trends are maybe not surprising, but when you go into details and you see specific situations, here we learn a lot of things actually, especially of course on the public policy side. And there are lots of details actually in the report. You've got also country profiles available, and you can see lots of details here. And so that was interesting for us to see what are the trends elsewhere, what is resonating with the French market, what is not. And actually, we felt that much of the trends that are developing were things that maybe were already there in France, some of them. Like, for example, diversity. France has always been quite specific with a high market share for French productions, but we see that appetite for diversity now elsewhere. And that's interesting to see that maybe we're not an exception anymore, and that's great news because other markets also, and actually in Asia already there was an appetite for local productions, but it is also rising. So, for example, that's interesting to see that it is also elsewhere. Art house, we've got a very specific definition of art house in France, RSC. I believe that has no equivalent elsewhere. It's very different, different notion of art house. But here also it is interesting to see how independent cinemas are maybe a decade away compared to other cinemas, and the opportunity there is for independent cinemas and for art house movies. And something that also France was a little bit specific about that because we had a strong market for art house movies, but it is also happening elsewhere. So it's not about comparing us. It's not about saying, are we better or not? Are there things we could implement in France? It was not the objective. It was to see what's the future for cinemas, and we see that there is lots of optimism with this survey because there are opportunities actually, and there are strengths for movie theaters they can build on, and how does that resonate with the French market?
Thank you. You wanted to react on the art house, the specifics and common and different elements between the French and the European market on the very definition and role of art house.
Well, France is a great country to talk about. I mean, they have a great support in terms of, financial support for the cinemas. They have the Agency for the Regional Development, which is a great tool to have this kind of geographical implementation all over the country. I mean, there is no country in Europe which has this kind of organization, like taking care of in a small village to have a itinerary, traveling cinema, or a small cinema to refurbish it, and so on and so on. You know, we are talking right now about cinema deserts. I mean, to try to support cinemas all over Europe, so that European citizens can have access to even film culture in general. But what I want to say is that I think that the let's say independent cinemas, and I don't want to make comparison mainstream, independent, art house. I think we are all working for the same reason, because we love films and we love audiences. But I think that the independent cinemas, because perhaps of the specificity of the films which are shown and programmed there. I mean, this is more difficult to sell a Korean 3 hours long film to an audience than a film of 2 hours with Ryan Gosling and George Clooney, or it just is simply the specificity of independent movies, because most of the time, independent films and independent cinemas and art house cinemas, they take risk in the programming. They show, everybody's talking about Club Kid, which is a first US title that premiered in Certains Regards. And I was reading the press the past days, and everybody would like to have it. Nobody knows. If you ask, I was talking this morning with an exhibitor who saw the movie. I said to him, who's done it? And don't have the name of the director, and nobody knows him. But I'm quite sure that this film is going to be a great success in the cinemas we represent, because perhaps because of the buzz of Cannes, but as well the way it will be programmed, the way it will be marketed through the social media. I think that independent exhibitors, they don't have as much revenues as others, because the titles are doing perhaps less in terms of box office, and they have to reinvent themselves all the time, and it's no surprise that a subscription model like Cinéville was created by art house exhibitors 15 years ago. By a very young guy called Thomas Hosman in Amsterdam, who decided one day to create a subscription model, and everybody now in the Netherlands, you have thousands of young people, coming to the cinemas, seeing films, going to a very diverse program proposed by these cinemas.
So there's a lot in what you present here, and I would like to start unpacking a little bit with you, Phil, starting with one element on the diversity. There is a consensus when we look at the report everywhere. Content diversity is the key. Everybody agrees, but we are at a moment of growing concentration. And so how do you view this current situation where, as the consensus builds around the absolute need of diversity, the situation might lead to more concentration? How do you feel about that as the head of UNIC?
That's a very long question with a very long answer. I think, just to set a bit of context, anyone, I'm sure this is not true of the people in this room, but anyone coming cold to this report, I think the first few pages have some bar charts on admissions now compared to admissions before the pandemic. And for most of the established territories, certainly for most of the established European territories, those numbers don't look good. But the reason why those numbers don't look good isn't a reduced appetite of people for cinema and cinema going. It's a reduced supply of films of all kinds, and you can draw almost a straight line graph between the reduction in admissions and the reduction in film supply, and you can draw almost the same straight line graph between those sectors that have recovered better, if that's English, and those that have a strong domestic slate. And that speaks to the demand of customers, yes, for the big Hollywood blockbusters, but also for films and stories that they can relate to their everyday lives. And I think what the report suggests at the moment is there's a failure of that supply, for various reasons, some well above our respective pay grades, some we have some influence on. That diversity of films is not currently finding its way to the screen in a way that will satisfy the needs and demands of the broadest possible audience. As an aside, because it's mentioned in the report, you can also essentially draw a straight line graph between the recovery in the established territories, between the recovery of sectors and the length of the exclusivity window, essentially. Because you're absolutely right, streaming is not the enemy, but God, streaming has complicated our lives. And the experiments, and we're all friends now, but the experiments that some studios took part in during the pandemic have confused customers about which films are out when they're out, when they're in the home. And we risk losing, I wouldn't say we've lost, but we risk losing an audience that thinks that every film is released in the home within 2 or 3 weeks. And that may be an issue for all films, but I would argue that's particularly an issue for more diverse films. The Project Hail Marys, the Michaels, name the film, they will always succeed, essentially. But if people are staying away from the cinema because they think a smaller film with smaller margins, with a smaller marketing budget, is going to be in the home, that's a disproportionate impact, and that loses us a broad audience as opposed to the people who just come for the big titles. So anything, I'm going to answer your question, anything which consolidates, to use a word, supply around a particular number of large players, and anything which supports that consolidation is a bad thing for our sector, certainly in cultural terms, but also in economic terms, in terms of ensuring that there is a sustainable business for all parts of the cinema ecosystem. You know, whether you're a circuit operator, whether you're a mid-sized operator, whether you identify as an art house operator, essentially. You know, we can talk about the Warner Brothers Paramount thing in a while, I'm sure, but I think there are other less high-profile dynamics underway, which are potentially damaging to that broad ecology of cinema going.
But don't you think that the exhibition community also have a strong responsibility, because beside the consolidation of supply, there is also, through the marketing of cinema, the consolidation of movie going on the premium experience, big shows, etc. And so there is a sort of a contradiction, apparently, between trying to give more spectacular reasons to the audience to come for events, big titles, and at the same time, what we really need as a community is a daily consumption of movies that you might love or hate, but just for the sake of going to the movies. Are we losing that?
So I think there absolutely is a responsibility on cinema operators of all shapes, business models and sizes to draw in the broadest audience. Inevitably, the noise is made by the big titles with the big marketing budgets, but through the flexibility provided by digitization, through the fact that, as the report suggests, I mean, exhibitors have always had a role in marketing films, but they're having to do much more of that now. And and there's a separate discussion about where the studios and distributors are spending their money and how much they're spending and how effective that is. But I think at the moment, even the mid-tier and smaller films aren't achieving cut-through in the way they did. So absolutely there's responsibility on cinema operators. But not the counter-argument, but the counter-force is, at a time when we are still a sector in recovery, and at a time when balance sheets are still not where we want them to be, cinema operators are having to fight the temptation just to go with the money that's on the table and not think about the money that might be on the table tomorrow or in a few weeks or in a few months, essentially. And there has always been that tension, but that tension is now more acute because at the same time, and the report, there is more of a requirement around investment in the experience. And cinema operators of all shapes and sizes are currently caught in the teeth of less admissions, so less revenue, higher costs, and less films to put in front of people. Now, clearly that position has improved this year, and I hope it improves next year. But, that's the challenge that cinema operators of all shapes and sizes are currently facing.
Fatima.
Yes, I agree with Phil. I always agree with him anyway. But I mean, it just
Safe,
no,
that's a
She
safe
really
approach.
doesn't.
He's
That's
right.
a safe approach.
He's right. I think that the job of exhibitor has changed over the years, and more since COVID. Before, I wouldn't say that 30 years ago or 40 years ago, I'm almost that old, that it's better? Yeah, sorry. That you were programming a movie and the distributor were doing the marketing and doing the posters and so on and so on. And everybody was doing his own job. Nowadays, as an exhibitor, you need to program, you need to think about whether you do multi-programming, different kind of programming, you have to do events, you have to do marketing for your venue, you have to do marketing for the films as well. You need to have, different kind of people. Like one in charge of the school screenings, one in charge of the social media, or you need. And if you don't have the money to pay 10 people, you have to let's say to have one person doing 3 different jobs. So this is a real challenge for the exhibitors, and I think not only for the bigger one, but as well for the let's say, smaller one or independent ones. And that's changed as well since COVID. Of course, platforms have done, have been a real, they are attracting people, the old audiences, they stayed at home since COVID. They haven't gone back. Because they discovered the platform, they all bought some kind of tablets, and they have now Netflix, Apple TV, and all these kind of things, even movie. So I mean, it's more challenging now, and I was saying it's easy for the independent because I love independent. But I mean, it's a real challenge to every day to bring audiences to the cinemas. You have a concentration on certain titles in terms of the revenues. Before you had, let's say, 20 films, 25 films. Now you have 5 films per year who are really drawing 60% or 70% of the audiences, even in art house cinemas. And I mean, I still believe, and I think exhibitors still believe, that diversity is key for success, and they will do that, because if you want to attract, as I said before, diverse communities, you need to show diverse films, but it's more work and more investment, and all the operating costs have risen. So you need to find a balance in terms of investments and revenues.
So while we're talking about these multiple initiatives, Cécile, you had plenty of opportunities to hear about initiatives from all around the world. What are some of the main directions taken by exhibitors that inspired you more, that you think should be reproduced, should be good levers for the industry? It could be big initiatives or small examples. What comes to your mind when you think about it?
I don't think we're in a place at the CNC to tell exhibitors what to do. It's not our job. We just wanted this report to be inspiring to exhibitors, and it's up to each exhibitor to really understand its local situation, its local audience. Like we were talking about premium, but premium doesn't meet the needs of all audiences. Maybe you're in a place where premium won't work, and it's a long-term investment premium, so you have to be careful when you decide to invest in premium screens. So yes, it's successful, and some boutique cinemas are successful around the world, and it can be an idea, but it depends obviously on your local situation. And we see, for example, the rise of premium concepts developed by exhibitors that are not technology brands like IMAX and ICE and Dolby Vision, etc. And that's a way to be more flexible in your concept. That's also a way to pay less, to invest less, because you don't have to have licensing fees to technology providers, of course. But still, it's an investment. And also, you need to have a concept that really differentiates itself and that is recognized as a premium concept by distributors and also by the audiences. And it can be also a challenge here, so that the audience accepts and is willing to pay more for the premium concept. So it can be a solution, but it's not. Maybe it's not the solution for some operators, some exhibitors, and the same for other initiatives. You've got pricing strategies that are quite interesting, but it's up to every cinema, every venue to analyze: is it for me? Is it something I can do? I can adapt to my audience. For example, you've got some exhibitors that decided to have a more simple pricing strategy. So just one single price or 2 single prices, very easy to understand for the audiences. That's one strategy. Others are more segmenting their pricing, depending on whether it is a premium screen or not a premium screen, according to the day and hour, and etc., etc. Depends. But yeah, there are some initiatives that are interesting, and we won't say which one you should apply. I hope it's inspiring for exhibitors.
But initiatives takes investment. It takes risk. It might require support. That's one also of the findings from the report, that very few territories bring public support and public funding in the way it happens here in France. Phil, with your overview of European markets, do you also have the same vision, and do you think that the lack of public support towards movie theaters themselves, not cinema in general, but movie theaters themselves, is something that's holding us back or forces us to be more creative?
Looking at the major, all European territories are important, but the major European territories, I mean, there is undoubtedly a pressing need for capital investment in some of the infrastructure, and capital funding is very difficult to find when you're living what we will call kind of hand-to-mouth existence, particularly for the smaller operators. My sense is the majority of those cinemas that UNIC represents, and the majority of cinemas that the National Association represent, do not actively seek a relationship with public funding, because they recognise that always comes with strings and expectations and paperwork. However, there are times, and clearly the pandemic was a particular and hopefully unique time, but there are times when the sensible application of public funding will ensure, in every sense of the word, sustainability. And it's undoubtedly true. I know obviously the UK sector particularly well, but if I look at other European sectors, there are certain technological changes that and infrastructure changes that cinemas could make with some capital investment, which would save them significant money in the long run, and probably would mean that they have less need to call on public funding in the long run. So that's a very long way of saying, yes, I think there is a need for public funding in some circumstances, in certain contexts, but I don't sense that many of the people, or a significant number of the people that UNIC represents, would want that to be an ongoing relationship. There are certain, kind of crucial points where the addition of the application of that public funding would be valuable, and I suspect, given where we are at the moment, this is one of those, to be honest.
And actually, when we look at some of the innovative initiatives across Europe, to unzoom from France, but look at the EU, there has been a lot of support from EU, but Europa Cinemas has also and is still playing a key role in supporting innovative initiatives with a strong focus on the movie theaters themselves. So, you were mentioning Cineville. There are other examples. Can you tell us a little bit more how you play this role and how it has moved the needle for some of your members?
I think that, you were talking about capital investment, but this is, as you said, for bigger exhibition companies. I think that for the smaller operators you are talking about, and especially smaller independent cinemas, this is more difficult to get access to big capital investment, and because they don't cope with it. But I think that France is very, the exhibitors in France are very lucky, all kinds of exhibitors, big companies and small companies, Germany as well. I would say in the Nordic countries, there is a strong support for cinemas, but many cinemas all over Europe, if we were not supporting them financially for their programming, for their activities, and we've been as well supporting exhibitors in terms of skills development, and we've been creating 5 years ago Collaborate to Innovate, which is an innovation fund for innovative tools and innovative practices. So
many cinemas wouldn't have had, let's say, the chance to set up or to try to launch or to some new things in the cinemas. And Cineville, for example, in the Netherlands, was copied through the funding we were
awarding to these exhibitors in Belgium, in Austria, in Germany, in Sweden. Now it's in Denmark, and I know that Spain, Italy are trying to set up this kind of models, and you see the results. So because 25% of increase in terms of audiences, and most of them are young people, So, I mean, I think that the public funding is not always available in the countries, and we have funding. It's not, we're not giving millions to the exhibitors, but this is an incentive, and they manage to start something with it.
Fatima was nice about me, so I'm going to be nice about her. What I know and what I see of Europa cinemas, the capacity building that you undertake in the sectors you work with, I think is essential. You talked. Sorry, I'm going to point out. You talked a brief while back about cinemas having to become more involved in marketing. And I dare say that many of the cinemas that are part of the Europa Cinemas network, and many smaller cinemas that are not, the person who turns the lights on in the morning is the person who turns the projector on, who turns the popcorn on, who does the books, who stamps the tickets, etc. And the demands now on cinema staff at smaller operators are much more varied than they used to be. And in a world which is continually moving on in terms of social media marketing, etc., there is a real risk of there becoming a divide between the way that larger operators, and I'm not suggesting that larger operators have an easy life, but they have capacity and resource for the most part, and smaller operators. So the kind of work that Europa Cinema does across a range of fronts, in terms of training, in terms of networking, in terms of shining a light on best practice and sharing best practice, I think is essential for particularly for the art house sector, but actually I think other parts of the sector could also learn from some of the approaches that Europa Cinema takes. So there, I've said it.
So there is so much in this report, and I still have a couple of questions, but just want to give the opportunity to anyone in the audience who would like to bring up a specific point of question. Yeah.
Thank you. It's very interesting. I agree with everything being said, but I'm a little bit. I'm curious about. Are you linking the surveys to what kind of movies you have? I heard that you said, Phil, that the movies could be better. We don't see.
I don't think I said the movies could be better.
Sorry.
I said there could be more of them.
Oh yeah, you did.
Yes.
Sorry, but in fact, what we see, I'm
don't
from. Sorry, don't quote that. What we see in Denmark is that not what you are telling us, that old people don't want to go to the cinemas. We have a very strong audience coming. A lot of them are coming. It is all depending on the attraction of the movies. And I think we are missing this when we are discussing it. I were participating in a data survey that was made where the conclusion was that women between 28 and 35 were not seeking our homepages as much as they used to do. And then they have been looking at what movies did we run in that period where they did the data. And there was no movie for that segment. So I think that we have had a period where we have had a lot of TV movies, which we have in the old days. Maybe we should call them streaming movies now, not cinematic movies. And I think that we have local movies are having a big impact on how it's running. And at least for the Danish movies, they have been for a long period very weak. I think I saw Peter's up there. We see that the Swedish films are not doing very well, and it has a direct influence on. Yeah.
Kick a man when he's down, why don't you?
No. But sorry, I don't want to make people sad. But I think that we miss out on that the movies are not attractive enough.
I wasn't saying that the old people are not coming back. They are less. present. I mean, in Denmark, I know. I talked to an exhibitor from a great independent cinema in Copenhagen many years ago, and he was saying to me, "Oh, I don't need all this pricing, blah blah blah, because I have my audience. They are, let's say, 55 plus, and they are still coming back even after COVID. And now, but this generation of old people is dying. So we need to replace it.
We're not
and
there yet.
We need to go. Sorry, no.
Wow.
I'm this generation of 50 plus. So I mean, we need to replace it, and we need to. I think that's very important. I mean. We need to build in the future audiences. This is key for us, and this is exactly what is our strengths all over the exhibition, because we have young people. This is the cheapest night out for Gen Z. That's why they're coming, and this is a collective. They can talk about the films and cinemas. The venues are improving. You have bars. When you go in different places now, you have a lot of cinemas. They are having small places where you can drink coffee. You can have a drink. You have this premium stuff. I mean, we are offering. I mean, in general, so much that other cultural institutions don't provide.
Always a challenge to manage a panel with passionate people, Fatima.
No. But I mean, we are really great venues, and we have great ideas, and we just need to apply them. And it's really very important. We really need to build in these future audiences.
Yeah, but if I hear Michael's comment properly, maybe if you want to reply, it's we can do whatever we want. If we have weak movies, there is nothing we can do.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I've done the job. I've done the job long enough not to make any comment ever on the quality of films. But what I will say is, you can make comments on the diversity of films and the extent to which they talk to different audiences. I wouldn't quite put it as bluntly as you did, Julien, but to be honest, what cinemas are now attempting to do is give people as broad a range of experiences as possible. But it's much more difficult to do that if, the mass majority of people, however good the food and drink is, however good the coffee is, the vast majority of people go to the cinema to watch a film.
But also...
And it's much more difficult to do that if you don't have the diverse range of films that talk to the broadest possible audience.
And at the same time, in most of the interviews we conducted, it appears pretty clearly that the most successful exhibitors are the ones who are more entrepreneurial and innovative and bring new ideas. So there is always this discussion going on between exhibition and distribution, and that makes Cécile react.
I just wanted to jump in on the French market, because actually what we see on the French market, old people did come back in theaters in France. It was rather the mid-range, like 35, let's say 35 to 49-year-olds, families especially, that were more on streaming platforms and that did not come back as soon as the other age ranges. Not old people, actually, but it's because of the films also offer and the diversity of films, because we've got lots of French movies that attract those older audiences, and so it's not really an issue for French movies to attract older audiences. It's rather an issue to attract younger audiences, actually. But it's different. So I think it's diversity, and I totally agree with Phil, to attract diverse audiences. And it's also a matter of awareness of the movies. So it's just not a matter of quantity of movies. Actually, we've got lots of movies. Last year in France, we had a record number of new releases, more than 800. So it's not a matter of quantity, right? It's a matter of getting known that those movies are released and that they can appeal to you, and this is also what matters today. The marketing around films, and that relates to what we were saying, that exhibitors now have to be even more active in the marketing of films, because it's really key today.
That's indeed awareness of movies is indeed a major challenge that was identified in the research. I have a question or comments on the front row here.
So I'm from the American market. I live in New York City, and I love this conversation about
diverse films to create broader audiences. But the bigger issue is that the system is so broken. So if you live in, I'm just going to speak about New York because that's what I'm familiar with. And it's like you don't even have to look at the data. You just have to look at your neighborhood. So if you live in a neighborhood that doesn't have movie theaters and it's predominantly a marginalized community, like predominantly Black, Hispanic, North African people, right? So to make things worse, there's no movie theater in my neighborhood, right? And then the films that are in the movie theaters don't have people that look like me. I just did a quick Google search, and generally, even the most like the Hollywood films are predominantly white people in these stories. So it shows that the film industry is not even making films like they used to, like let's say in the 1990s, where we had like the golden age of Black cinema. You don't have the films that say that you care about my stories. You don't have a movie theater in my neighborhood to say that you care about my existence in the space. But you depend on my ticket. You depend on my admission so that we can create bigger box office. But the system's broken. And I love what you said about we need to have like schools go, like bringing schools to the theater. This is very important. And I do this in New York City with the New York International Children's Film Festival. Incredible. But we stop at 8th grade. Now, the ages of 14 to 18 is very important because you change as a person. So we're not teaching the critical thinking skills that come with cinema for that 14 to 18-year-old age group. But we expect that when you become 25, that suddenly you're going to want to go to the cinema. But why would you? You don't show me in the cinema, you don't have a movie theater in my neighborhood, and you don't care about my opinion at a very pivotal age where my opinions matter most. And so I think that all of these things matter, but there's a bigger problem with a broken system, and all of them are super interconnected. And the last thing that I'll say is the responsibility of an exhibitor now is to be an advocate first. Besides turning on the popcorn, the lights, and all the other things, and the marketing, and the social media, and the program, the curating, you have to be the biggest advocate of the thing that's not even getting support in one of the richest cities in the world. And so I think like that's the bigger problem that I seek. So it's just like a bigger comment that I agree with all of you, but like everything is connected. And for some reason, we complicate it, and it's like the most simplest answer, but yet we don't really focus on that. So that's my thoughts on there.
We work very much on accessibility and in the cinemas, and we engage our exhibitors to. We have a program and a chart about accessibility. Just for impaired people, for example, people who can't hear very well, and wheelchairs and so on, but as well for let's say people who are not able to, for example, to pay even their ticket. We have launched a lot of initiative in this direction, and I agree with you. We need to have a more diverse and perhaps films done for younger audiences, more. Who really tackle with their own issues, and for diverse audience as well.
I think we had one. I'm sorry, there's going to be one last question over there.
Make it a good one.
The market of families was brought up earlier as being one that hasn't returned to cinemas as much. I know a lot of the families around me are very price conscious. Have there been any cinemas or any countries that have really successfully brought family films and brought families back into cinemas and experimenting with more than just the latest family film with the big marketing budgets into pushing for things that are a bit more culturally enriching?
Phil, go for it. Cécile.
Well, no, actually, if that was the comment that was made, I think the experience of most European territories is that families led the charge when cinemas reopened, partly because parents were so fed up of having their kids in the house for 6 months that they just wanted them to do something else. I think the dearth of the lack of family films over a prolonged period of recent years has been a major issue for cinemas. Undoubtedly, cost of living issues are also a challenge. If you have even you have a small number of kids, and all the price tags mounts up. And what you are seeing, and again, I won't pick favourites, but what you are seeing amongst a number of European operators are, family tickets, group discounts, etc., etc. I'll go back to it again. It sounds like a broken record, but the challenge still is to make the economics work for the cinema as well for the family. But I think if the statement is that families have stayed away, that's not a feature I recognise. It may be true in some territories, but certainly not across European territories. Again, the challenge has been, you can only watch Zootropolis 2 so many times, to be perfectly honest. So actually, it's been on the supply side, and that sounds really complacent, but I think particularly for that group, that's been the issue the sector has had, notwithstanding all of the cost of living issues you mentioned.
Thanks. Last question. Not to say that the previous one was not good, because you say, the very last question then.
Thank you. I have a question to Phil. So, if I get it right, you said that filmmakers more and more bring AI to their projects, and you also don't want to miss a chance to embrace it, right? And my question is, in this case, do you consider a possible scenario in the near future that people, like the film audience, will get tired of artificial content, and they would like to have more like handmade content, like made by people?
I didn't say the first thing, but it's true that AI is now an embedded process in a lot of film production. Essentially, there was a particular flurry of news about The Brutalist maybe a year or two back, where AI was used to adjust the accents, Hungarian accents. Not that anyone, many I suspect, would have noticed whether it was a good Hungarian accent or a bad Hungarian accent. And I tell this anecdote quite often. One of our smaller operators contacted us and said a customer had come to them and asked that they put on their website if a film had been made with AI, because if it had, they wouldn't go to see it. I suspect if they did that, then that person would see very, very few films, because most films now have some element of AI within them. And I don't think actually, for the most part, that matters a huge amount. I think if you're talking about AI that appears on the screen, so avatars and that kind of thing, I think that's different. The challenge for us, as I said at the outset, is if you look at production and again distribution, certainly use AI for a range of things. And an exhibition has started to embrace AI around some elements of programming. But this is a conversation I have with one or two of the companies who've been most outspoken or most vocal on their use of this. Absolutely, it makes sense. But what we cannot lose as a sector is the human element. What we can say is that every time someone goes to a cinema and sits in front of a film, that film has been chosen by a human who has decided that you are the kind of audience that might like that film, essentially. So I think we're a long way away from the, kind of the nightmare scenario you suggest. But I think we need to be cautious. We're not a streaming service. We don't pick films by algorithm for customers, essentially. That's our that's our unique selling point compared to a whole range of other ways that people consume film these days. So I think while we need to embrace AI on the exhibition side, we need to be cautious about how that's applied, and certainly need to be cautious, or need to be open to the conversation rather with our customers on how AI is used and how it's not used. But I'm already into territory. This is well beyond my level of understanding, I'll be honest. But there are other people I know in the sector who are looking at this closely. But we do not want to lose the human interaction, which makes cinema the unique experience it is.
And I think, Fatima, you had the last comment about AI as well.
Yes, we are, for example, in our lab, we are promoting, not promoting like doing big advertising for the use of AI, but we know that a lot of, let's say, small companies use it, slowly, and adapt it as a new practice, because they can use it for the marketing, for the data analysis, and so on and so on. It has nothing to do with welcoming people. We don't have any robot or any somebody, produced by AI, and to welcome the people and organize the screenings and the programming and curate the programming. I mean, this will be, of course, kept in human hands, But I mean, I think, need to embrace this new technological opportunity to simplify some processes, working flows, and so on. And especially for small companies, I think AI is helpful.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much to all the attendants, and thanks to our esteemed panelists for their great contribution as always. Very happy to host you here at the Cinemas Club. This conference, like all the conference of the previous days and the next few days, will be available on our YouTube channel, Box Office Pro France. And come back soon. And thanks again. Have a wonderful and second part end of the market and festival. Thank you very much.